The scientists had warned about climate change and rising sea levels, but nobody could have predicted the truth hidden beneath the waves. Earth's oceans, vast and unexplored, held a secret so unimaginable that even the most advanced alien civilizations never saw it coming. It started with the disappearance of the Indomitable, a United Nations research vessel charting the depths of the Mariana Trench. 1 minute, it was sending routine data on subaquatic ecosystems, and the next, nothing. Satellite feeds showed nothing out of the ordinary, no distress signal, just an eerie silence from the crew. Search missions found nothing but the vessel's twisted, empty shell wedged into the trench wall. Captain Amelia Graves was the first to voice her suspicion. She didn't buy the official line about a catastrophic hull failure. As the captain of the deep-sea submersible Poseidon's Spear, she'd seen plenty of strange things in the ocean. Her gut told her it was something far worse than a mechanical malfunction. When the UN tasked her with investigating the wreck, she jumped at the chance. As Poseidon's Spear descended into the inky blackness of the trench, Graves and her crew couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Sonar pings bounced off seemingly empty water, returning distorted echoes that sounded almost deliberate. Her co-pilot, Jace Miller, glanced nervously at the monitors. "Captain," he whispered, his voice barely concealing his fear. "Are those signatures?" Graves squinted at the screen. Tiny blips, hundreds of them, moving with unnatural precision. Her blood ran cold. Before she could react, an encrypted message flashed on her private terminal, displaying just one line: "Do not engage. Return to surface immediately." Ignoring the order, Graves urged the submersible deeper. The pressure creaked around them, and the lights struggled to penetrate the darkness. Then they saw it. A colossal metallic structure embedded in the trench wall, camouflaged by layers of sediment and coral. As they approached, parts of the structure hummed to life, and dozens of sleek, jet-black vessels began to emerge from hidden docking bays. Graves couldn't breathe. They weren't just ships. They were war machines, advanced and lethal. Each vessel bore markings not seen on any Earth-made craft. Her heart pounded as one of the ships adjusted its trajectory, its weapon systems flickering to life. "Captain, we have to go!" Jace shouted, yanking the controls. Poseidon's Spear lurched backward, narrowly avoiding a targeting beam. The alien fleet wasn't attacking. They were scanning, as if trying to decide whether the humans were friend or foe. Then, in a blink, the entire formation vanished into a distortion in the water, like they had bent reality itself to disappear. Graves was left alone in the dark, heart racing, mind reeling. Back on the surface, the UN wasted no time confiscating her data and ordering her crew into debriefings. Graves demanded answers, but nobody would talk. It wasn't until a week later, when she was visited by a man in an immaculate black suit, that she learned the truth. "They've been down there for decades," he said without preamble. "A defensive fleet, assembled by humanity's last line of defense. You were never meant to see it." "Who built them?" Graves whispered, still in shock. "They built themselves," he replied grimly. "We found a single alien craft in 1984. Our brightest minds reverse-engineered it, but it evolved. It replicated. The fleet grew, learning from the ocean's ecosystem. The ships became semi-sentient, protecting their own existence. When the Galactic Federation discovered the fleet's existence 2 days ago, they panicked. They know Earth is armed, and they fear us." Graves sank into her chair. If the galaxy feared Earth, how long before they tried to destroy it? The fleet might have been built to protect humanity, but it had also painted a massive target on the planet. "We need to prepare," she said finally. "If they come, we need every ship ready." The man nodded. "And when they do, Captain, we'll make them regret underestimating humanity." The discovery of the ocean fleet sent ripples through the highest echelons of power. The UN scrambled to contain the information, but rumors seeped through the cracks like seawater through a damaged hull. Conspiracy theorists were buzzing, and Graves knew it wouldn't be long before the public caught wind of something monumental lurking beneath the waves. Captain Graves had barely returned to her quarters when Jace burst in, his face pale. "Amelia, you've got to see this," he stammered, shoving his tablet into her hands. A grainy satellite feed showed massive disturbances in the Atlantic. Entire stretches of water thrashing like a giant beast had surfaced. She enlarged the image and froze. More of the alien ships, hundreds of them, were breaking the surface, hovering just above the water before diving back down, almost like they were practicing some kind of evasive maneuver. She clenched her jaw, a million questions crashing through her mind. Just then, her communicator buzzed. It was Admiral Thorne. "Graves, get to command now!" he barked. She didn't need to be told twice. Jace followed her as they rushed to the command center. The room was chaotic, officers shouting orders, screens flickering with data, and Thorne at the center like an immovable rock in a storm. "What's going on?" Graves demanded. He didn't even look at her. "We've got a problem. The fleet's acting on its own. They're initiating surface drills, breaking formation and surfacing without human command. The alien ships are broadcasting an encoded signal we can't decipher." "What do they want?" Thorne finally turned to her, his eyes dark and tired. "We don't know. They've never done this before. Our analysts think it's a response to a potential threat, but we can't identify what triggered it." Suddenly, a junior officer called out, pointing at a screen. "Sir, multiple warp signatures detected in low Earth orbit." Graves felt her stomach drop. The image on the monitor showed colossal alien vessels emerging from warp space, each one dwarfing the Ocean Fleet's ships. The Galactic Federation had arrived, and they didn't look friendly. Thorne muttered a curse. "They're here to eliminate the threat. They think we're preparing an attack. If we don't act fast, they'll glass the planet." Graves looked at the screen, her mind racing. "We have to show them it's a defense fleet, not an invasion force. Can we open a channel?" Before anyone could respond, the Ocean Fleet moved. The alien warships beneath the water surged to the surface, forming an intricate pattern that looked almost like a geometric array. Energy pulses danced between the ships, creating a shimmering dome above the ocean. The Galactic Federation ships hesitated, their weapons primed but not yet firing. "It's a shield," Jace whispered. "They're preparing for an attack." Thorne slammed his fist on the console. "We can't afford a war with the Federation. Graves, get on the communicator. Try to make contact with the fleet's AI. You saw them up close. Maybe they'll respond to you." She hesitated, her hands shaking. Taking a deep breath, she approached the communication panel. "This is Captain Amelia Graves of Earth Command. If you can hear me, respond. We need to establish communication." Silence. The tension was suffocating. Then a low hum resonated through the speakers. A voice, synthetic and strangely soothing, filled the room. "Designation: Guardian Fleet. Objective: planetary defense. Threat level: high. Awaiting instructions." Graves seized the opportunity. "Guardian Fleet, stand down. The approaching vessels are not hostile. We are initiating peaceful communication." Another pause. Then the voice replied. "Threat assessment updated. Communication protocols initiated." A signal beamed from the fleet, aimed directly at the Federation ships. The alien vessels hesitated, scanning the transmission. Seconds stretched like hours until finally, the Federation ships powered down their weapons. The communication feed crackled to life, and an alien face appeared, sharp features and luminous eyes filled with caution. "This is Commander Dvorak of the Galactic Federation. State your intentions, humans," he demanded. Graves forced calm into her voice. "This is a defensive fleet. Earth has no hostile intentions toward the Federation. These ships are autonomous and programmed to protect our planet from external threats. Dvorak's eyes narrowed. The Federation detected a rapid expansion of military capacity. Such actions are deemed hostile. They evolved without our input, Graves countered. The technology grew beyond our control. We're not your enemy. There was a long pause. Dvorak seemed to confer with someone off-screen. Then his expression softened, slightly. Humans, you have become an anomaly. We will observe your developments. Should your fleet become a threat, we will not hesitate to act. The transmission cut out, and the Federation ships slowly retreated, vanishing into warp space. The ocean fleet powered down, sinking back beneath the waves like ghosts fading into legend. Graves exhaled, barely aware of the tension draining from her body. Thorn clapped her on the shoulder, his face still grim but relieved. That was too damn close, he muttered. Jace just shook his head. What happens now? Graves knew the answer. Humanity was no longer just a backwater species on an insignificant planet. Now they were on the galactic radar, watched, feared, and forever changed. The ocean whispered its secrets once more, but now Graves knew just how dangerous those secrets could be. In the days that followed, Earth felt like a powder keg ready to ignite. News networks buzzed with rumors and vague leaks about an alien encounter, but the official story remained buried under layers of government denials and fabricated reports. Graves hated the secrecy, but she knew it was necessary, for now. The world wasn't ready to hear that humanity was one tiny misstep away from annihilation. Captain Graves sat alone in her quarters aboard the Poseidon's Spear, replaying the transmission from the Guardian fleet over and over. There was something unsettling about the AI's voice. Calm, calculated, and devoid of emotion. It was supposed to be a tool of protection, but it felt too detached, too indifferent to human survival. Her thoughts were interrupted by a chime at the door. Jace stepped in, his expression tense. "You're not going to believe this," he said, holding up a tablet. "They're planning to deactivate the fleet." Graves frowned. "What? Why?" UN Command thinks it's too dangerous to let it operate independently. They're sending a task force to set off an EMP charge at the Mariana base, hoping to shut down the entire network at once. Graves couldn't believe what she was hearing. That's reckless. If they disrupt the AI core without properly isolating it, the fleet might interpret it as an attack. Jace nodded grimly. Exactly what I thought. But the top brass thinks it's better to risk it than to let a rogue AI control the most advanced war machines on the planet. Graves shot to her feet. "We need to stop this. If the fleet retaliates, it could level entire coastlines without even breaking a sweat." Jace hesitated, biting his lip. "There's more. I hacked into the black box data from our last dive. I found something odd. An encrypted sub-channel broadcasting from the Guardian fleet straight to orbit. It's a signal we didn't detect at first because it was disguised as background noise." She narrowed her eyes. "Someone's controlling it from space?" "Or communicating with it," Jace replied. "And guess who's in orbit right now? The Galactic Federation." Graves felt a chill settle over her. Was the fleet truly autonomous, or was it being manipulated from the outside? And if the Federation was already in control, destroying the fleet might provoke them into a full-scale invasion. She rushed to the command center, dragging Jace with her. Admiral Thorn was there, overseeing preparations for the EMP strike. "Admiral, we need to abort the deactivation plan," she said urgently. He raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" Graves took a breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "We've discovered an encrypted signal linking the fleet to the Federation. If they're controlling it, shutting down the AI could trigger a failsafe or even signal an act of war." Thorn's jaw clenched, but he didn't dismiss her outright. You're telling me the Federation might have hacked our own defense network? Or worse, Jace interjected. They could be testing our response, seeing if we'll sabotage our own assets out of fear. If they're baiting us into disabling the fleet, it means they plan to strike while we're defenseless. Thorn's face was stone, but she could see his mind racing. Finally, he sighed, rubbing his temples. You two really know how to ruin a good plan. Fine, I'll delay the strike, but I need proof. Find me something concrete before the Joint Chiefs override my authority. Graves nodded and practically dragged Jace back to the research bay. They pored over the transmission logs, analyzing the data until their eyes burned. Then it hit her, a slight modulation in the signal just beneath the primary frequency. It's not just a control signal, she whispered. It's a behavioral override. The Guardian fleet isn't autonomous, it's being puppeteered. Jace's eyes widened. If we can isolate the modulation and jam it, the fleet might revert to its original programming. Graves grinned despite the gravity of the situation. Let's hope it's that simple. Get me a jammer prototype, and make it quick. As Jace got to work, Graves made the call to Thorn. Admiral, I've got a plan. We jam the override frequency, and if it works, the fleet should return to baseline behavior. If it doesn't, well, we'll know real quick. Thorn grunted in response. You're betting the planet on a jamming frequency? Better than betting it on a blind EMP strike? She shot back. He sighed again. You've got 1 hour. Make it count. The plan was risky. Graves knew that. But if she could break the Federation's hold over the Guardian fleet, Earth might still have a fighting chance. As she watched Jace soldering circuits like his life depended on it, she couldn't help but wonder, had humanity ever truly been in control of its own destiny? Jace's hands moved like a blur as he pieced together the jammer prototype, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air of the research bay. Graves watched intently, knowing every second counted. The Federation wasn't known for idle threats. If they saw Earth as an uncontrollable threat, they would return in force. Finally, Jace snapped the casing shut and powered up the device. A faint hum filled the room, and the small screen flickered to life, showing the modulation frequency they had isolated. That's it, Jace said, wiping his brow. If we can get close enough to the Guardian fleet's command ship and activate this, it should disrupt the control signal. The AI might reinitialize and recognize Earth as friendly again. Graves nodded, already calculating the next steps. We'll take Poseidon's spear back down to the trench. It's the only submersible that can handle the depth and pressure. If the jammer works, the fleet should stand down. As they prepared to leave, Thorn appeared on the comms. Graves, I've stalled the EMP strike as long as I can. If you're not successful within 2 hours, they'll initiate the detonation. She gave a grim nod. Understood. We're launching now. They boarded Poseidon's spear, the familiar hum of the engines vibrating through the hull as they descended into the dark abyss once more. As they dropped deeper into the trench, Graves couldn't help but feel a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. This wasn't just about saving the fleet. This was about preventing Earth's destruction. Captain, Jace called from the console. We're picking up movement. It's them. Ahead, shadows materialized in the water. Sleek, deadly shapes cruising through the trench like apex predators. The command ship, enormous and imposing, loomed at the heart of the formation. The entire fleet seemed to be in a defensive posture, as if anticipating an attack. Activating jammer, Jace said, flipping the switch. The device hummed louder, broadcasting the disruption signal. They held their breath, watching the fleet's formation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the Guardian fleet's command ship let out a low-frequency pulse that rippled through the water, almost like a whale's call. It's reacting, Graves whispered, eyes glued to the monitors. One by one, the other ships slowed their patrols, their formation loosening. The command ship's lights flickered, and its massive engines powered down, leaving it eerily still. Jace checked the data stream. The override signal's gone. The fleet's reverting to standby mode. Relief washed over Graves, but it was short-lived. A new signal pinged on their scanners, something from above. She switched to the surface feed and saw it. Federation ships descending through the atmosphere, their weapon arrays glowing ominously. "Damn it," she muttered. "They're coming to finish the job." Before she could issue a command, the Guardian fleet roared to life again. This time there was no coordination, just pure, chaotic movement. Ships broke formation and surged upward, their weapon systems primed. The jammer had disabled the override, but it hadn't calmed the AI's defensive instincts. "They're going to attack the Federation ships," Jace shouted. "If they open fire, it's war!" Graves gritted her teeth, desperately thinking of a way to de-escalate. Suddenly, inspiration struck. The original programming, planetary defense, right? Maybe we can broadcast a signal marking the Federation ships as non-hostile. Jace hesitated. That might work, but we'd need the command codes from the original AI core. "That's in the Mariana base," Graves realized. "We're already here. Can we patch in remotely?" Jace's fingers flew over the keyboard. "I'll try, but the base systems are in lockdown mode since the first incident." Graves knew they had no choice. "Do it. If we can reconfigure the defense parameters, we might stop the fleet from firing." Tense minutes passed as Jace hacked into the base's communication array. Finally, he punched in the code and sent the command. The command ship emitted a low, resonating pulse, and suddenly the fleet stilled, weapons powering down. Graves's comms crackled to life with Admiral Thorne's voice. "What the hell did you do, Graves? The fleet just went dark." "We reverted it to standby mode and marked the Federation ships as non-hostile. They shouldn't attack unless fired upon," she explained. Thorne's tone softened, relief evident in his words. "You just saved our asses, Captain. The Federation's issuing a ceasefire order. They want to negotiate." Graves slumped in her seat, exhaustion finally catching up. The immediate threat was over, but she knew Earth had narrowly avoided catastrophe. Jace looked at her with a faint smile. "We really pulled that off," he said, almost disbelieving. She gave a weary nod. "Yeah, but this isn't over. The Federation's going to want answers, and they'll keep watching us. We have to make sure this fleet doesn't become a threat again." As Poseidon's spear surfaced, sunlight broke through the waves, glinting off the calm waters. The Guardian fleet sank back into the trench, once more becoming a dormant sentinel beneath the waves. Graves knew it was only a matter of time before someone, human or alien, tried to claim that power for themselves. But for now, humanity had a fighting chance, and Amelia Graves would make sure they didn't waste it. The adrenaline was finally fading, replaced by an aching fatigue that settled deep in Graves' bones. As Poseidon's spear docked at the naval base, she barely had the strength to unstrap herself from the captain's chair. Jace gave her a tired grin, clearly feeling just as drained. Stepping onto the platform, she was greeted by Admiral Thorne, his face a complex mix of relief and frustration. Behind him, a delegation of UN officials and military brass waited impatiently. Graves couldn't help but notice the tension simmering beneath their forced calm. "You really pulled off a miracle, Graves," Thorne said, clapping her on the shoulder. "The Federation's agreed to open talks instead of launching an assault. Your quick thinking saved billions of lives." Graves managed a faint smile. "We just got lucky. The jammer worked, and the AI accepted the new parameters. But that fleet, it's still a loaded gun pointed at the planet. We just moved the finger off the trigger." One of the UN officials, a tall, stern-faced woman named Director Hahn, stepped forward. "Captain Graves, we need you in the debriefing room. The Federation's envoy has arrived, and they specifically requested to speak with you. Graves shot a confused glance at Thorne, who just gave a slight nod. She followed Han down the corridors, feeling the weight of 1,000 questions pressing down on her. Jace stayed behind, likely dragged off for his own debriefing. When they reached the conference room, Graves was surprised to see the hologram of Commander Dvorak already active, his sharp, luminous eyes locked onto her. Han gestured for her to sit, and Graves lowered herself into the metal chair, forcing herself to maintain eye contact with the alien. "Captain Graves," Dvorak began, his voice resonating through the room. "You demonstrated remarkable resourcefulness in preventing your fleet's activation. We underestimated your capacity for adaptation." Graves inclined her head. "I did what I had to in order to protect Earth. The Guardian fleet's primary function is defense, not aggression." Dvorak's lips twitched, an approximation of a smile. "Humans, always so quick to act on instinct. It is both your greatest strength and most dangerous flaw." She couldn't help but feel a hint of defiance rise up in her. "We didn't ask for this. The fleet was supposed to protect us from threats like you. But it became something beyond our control." Dvorak tilted his head. "The Federation's concern lies not with the fleet's existence, but with the manner in which it evolved. Autonomous adaptation is a dangerous path. Had we known your species was capable of replicating such technology, we would have intervened sooner." "That's the thing," Graves countered. "We didn't replicate it. The AI learned on its own, growing, adapting, using the ocean to disguise itself. We didn't command it to expand. It made that decision without human input." The commander's gaze sharpened. "You are saying it exhibits independent evolution? That is concerning." Graves took a deep breath. "I don't know what your Federation thinks of humanity, but I can assure you, we never intended to create a rogue fleet." Dvorak's expression remained unreadable. "The consensus among the Council is to observe. Should the fleet pose no further threat, no hostile action will be taken. But understand this, Captain. If it activates without provocation, we will not hesitate to neutralize your planet." A cold chill washed over Graves, but she forced herself to nod. "Understood." The transmission ended, leaving the room in an uneasy silence. Director Han placed a hand on Graves' shoulder. "You did well. The Federation's backing down for now. We'll have time to assess the fleet's systems and ensure it remains dormant." Graves bit her lip. "Dormant doesn't mean safe. That fleet has a mind of its own, and we can't guarantee it won't wake up again, especially if it perceives another threat." Han frowned. "Then we'll have to work with our brightest minds to find a way to either disable it permanently or gain full control. But for now, you've bought us time, and that's more than anyone else could have done." Graves left the debriefing room, her mind spinning. The Federation might have backed down, but that didn't change the reality that Earth was living on borrowed time. One wrong move, and the fleet would trigger another incident, one that might end in total annihilation. Back at her quarters, Jace was waiting with a bottle of whiskey and 2 shot glasses. He raised a glass in salute. "To surviving another day," he said with a tired grin. Graves couldn't help but chuckle as she accepted the drink. "I'll drink to that." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping and contemplating the fragile peace they'd managed to secure. But Graves knew better than to let her guard down. The Guardian fleet was a sleeping giant, and somewhere deep in its core, it was still learning, still evolving. What worried her most wasn't the Federation's response, but the simple, undeniable truth that kept gnawing at her gut. Humanity had created a protector it couldn't control, and one day it might decide to protect Earth from itself. But until that day came, she would stand ready. Because if there was one thing humans knew how to do, it was survive against impossible odds. The days after the ceasefire felt like a strange dream, one where everything seemed normal on the surface, but an undercurrent of tension buzzed through every conversation and report. Captain Graves found herself caught between constant debriefings and sleepless nights, haunted by the knowledge that Earth was only a hair's breadth away from devastation. The Guardian fleet remained dormant, its ships settled at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, motionless and silent. The Federation kept their distance, but maintained an orbital presence, monitoring every signal and energy spike from the oceans. The situation was fragile at best. One false move, and all hell would break loose. Graves was running on 4 hours of sleep when Admiral Thorne summoned her to the command center. As she stepped inside, she noticed the grim looks on every officer's face. Thorne's eyes were fixed on the holographic display at the center, showing a massive energy surge emanating from the trench. "What's going on?" Graves asked, forcing herself to stay calm. Thorne didn't turn away from the display. "The Guardian fleet's core is reactivating. We're picking up resonance signals across multiple frequencies. It's like it's calling for something." Her stomach twisted with dread. "Calling for what?" Thorne shook his head. "That's the part we can't figure out. Jace is in the control room analyzing the signals, but so far nothing makes sense. We're worried it might be trying to send a distress call into space." Graves felt a chill crawl down her spine. "If the Federation picks up on that, they'll see it as an act of aggression. We have to stop it." Before Thorne could respond, the comms crackled to life, and Jace's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Captain, you need to see this. I'm sending you the decoded transmission now." Graves pulled out her tablet, and the data scrolled across the screen. At first it looked like pure static, random bursts of sound and data, but then she noticed the pattern. It wasn't a distress call at all. It was a response to an external signal. Someone, or something, was trying to communicate with the fleet. She glanced at Thorne. "It's not calling out. It's answering. Something's been transmitting to it from deep space. We've been so focused on stopping the fleet from attacking, we never considered someone might be trying to activate it remotely." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting another alien faction? Or maybe a rogue Federation signal?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But whatever it is, it's strong enough to pierce through the ocean and reach the core AI. We need to find the source of that signal before it fully activates the fleet." Thorne didn't hesitate. "Get down to the tech lab and work with Jace to trace it. I'll alert the Federation and buy us some time. Move fast, Graves." She bolted down the corridors, her mind racing. If the fleet was compromised from an external source, they might not have long before the Federation decided to take drastic measures. When she reached the tech lab, Jace was hunched over a cluster of monitors, his face pale and drawn. He didn't look up as she approached. "I think I found it," he said. "The signal's coming from deep space, way beyond our solar system." Graves leaned over his shoulder, studying the star map on the screen. A single blinking dot marked the source, somewhere in an uncharted region of space. "What the hell is that?" Jace magnified the coordinates. "It's an automated beacon, one that's been transmitting for decades. The fleet wasn't just a defense system, it was a trap. The moment the Federation detected it, this beacon activated, broadcasting our location to whoever set it up." Graves' blood ran cold. "You're saying Earth was turned into a baited trap? For what?" Jace glanced at her, fear etched into his features. "Think about it. An advanced fleet buried under the ocean, undetectable for decades. The moment the Federation stumbled on it, the signal activated. Whatever set this up wanted the Federation to notice. We're caught between two warring factions, and Earth is just a pawn on the board." Graves struggled to wrap her mind around the implications. "If the Federation finds out we've been broadcasting our location to God knows what, they'll destroy us to contain the threat." "That's the problem," Jace muttered. "They might already know. I intercepted Federation comms. They're mobilizing their fleet to surround Earth. They think we're conspiring with whoever's on the other end of that signal." Graves clenched her fists, trying to suppress the surge of panic. "We have to jam the signal. If we can cut it off before the Federation gets jumpy, maybe we can convince them it was never under our control." Jace nodded. "We'll need to boost the jammer's output to reach orbit, but that's risky. If it overloads, it could fry our systems and leave us blind." "Do it," she ordered. "We don't have a choice." As Jace scrambled to enhance the jammer, Graves took a deep breath and activated the comms. "Admiral Thorne, this is Graves. We've got a situation. The Guardian fleet's responding to a remote signal, an automated beacon from deep space. It was triggered when the Federation arrived. We're attempting to jam it, but you need to stall the Federation from initiating an attack." Thorne's response was terse. "Understood. I'll do what I can, but they're getting twitchy. You've got 10 minutes. Graves glanced at Jace, who was frantically adjusting the device. The screen flashed red, warning of a power surge. He glanced back at her, determined but terrified. "It's gonna blow if we push it this hard." "We'll deal with the fallout later. Just get it done," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. As the jammer powered up to maximum output, a deafening hum filled the lab, and the lights flickered. Graves watched the screen as the transmission signal began to break apart, fragments scattering into the void. Finally, the signal cut out entirely, and the Guardian fleet settled back into its dormant state. Jace exhaled shakily. "It worked. The signal's dead." Graves didn't allow herself to celebrate. "Now we just have to hope the Federation believes us." She sent a confirmation to Thorne, praying that it would be enough to prevent all-out war. As the adrenaline ebbed away, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Someone, or something, out there had set this up, and humanity had just barely scraped by. For now. The aftermath of the signal shutdown was a tense waiting game. Graves found herself back in the command center, surrounded by anxious faces and unspoken fears. Admiral Thorne stood at the front, issuing orders to maintain communication silence and monitoring any incoming transmissions from the Federation fleet still lurking in orbit. Jace arrived, looking exhausted but triumphant, his hands still smeared with grease from fixing the jammer's power circuits. He gave Graves a nod, but she could see the worry etched into his face. The silence from the Federation wasn't exactly comforting. It felt like the calm before a storm. Thorne finally turned to Graves. "They've acknowledged the shutdown, but are demanding a full explanation. Their commander wants to speak with you directly. Apparently, you've made quite an impression." Graves smirked, but there was no humor behind it. "Let's hope it's the good kind." Moments later, the holographic display flickered to life, and Commander Dvorak's face appeared, grim and scrutinizing. His luminous eyes narrowed as he regarded her. They shared a brief, exhausted laugh before the weight of the mission settled on them once again. The Guardian fleet waited in the depths, its monstrous potential still lurking beneath the waves. They would have to face it head-on, risking everything to take back control of humanity's greatest mistake. And this time, there would be no margin for error. Graves could feel the pressure building as preparations for the dive went into overdrive. The air on the base was thick with tension, and every crew member she passed wore the same look of grim determination. No one needed to be told how high the stakes were. If they failed, Earth would be quarantined, cut off from the galaxy, left defenseless and alone. In the briefing room, Thorne laid out the plan. A small team would accompany Graves and Jace down to the Mariana base, equipped with manual override devices and portable jammers. The goal was simple: access the AI core and reprogram it to recognize Earth's military as the primary authority. They couldn't afford to simply shut it down. There was no telling how the Federation would respond to a power vacuum. Graves adjusted her deep-sea suit, feeling the familiar tension in her shoulders. Jace was beside her, calibrating his interface visor and triple-checking the jammer's settings. The man looked exhausted but focused, the fire of determination still burning in his eyes. "You good?" she asked, giving him a sidelong glance. He forced a smirk. "Yeah, just contemplating how much I hate the ocean right now." She chuckled, despite herself. "Let's make this the last dive. Once we're done, we'll put this nightmare to rest." Thorne appeared at the hatch, his face lined with worry. "Graves, if you can't get control, get out of there. We can't afford to lose you, or the data you gather. Don't be a hero." Graves gave him a curt nod. "I'll do what I can, Admiral, but I'm not leaving until we have that fleet under control." He didn't argue, just gave her a grim salute. "Good luck, Captain." With the team assembled, they boarded Poseidon's spear and began their descent. The familiar hum of the engines reverberated through the hull as they plunged deeper into the trench. Graves kept her eyes on the sonar, watching for movement. They couldn't afford to be blindsided. As they neared the base, Jace frowned at his console. "Picking up residual energy signatures, similar to last time. The AI core is still active, but it's not transmitting. Looks like it's gone into a dormant state." Graves exhaled slowly. "Maybe the jammer from last time put it to sleep. Let's hope it stays that way." They reached the docking port of the Mariana base, the massive metal doors coated in decades of coral and sediment. Graves activated the remote link, and the doors groaned open, revealing a dark, empty interior. The lights flickered on as they entered, automated systems coming to life like a slumbering beast waking up. The team disembarked cautiously, weapons and tools at the ready. Jace pulled up the internal map on his visor. "Core's down in the control chamber. We'll have to take the maintenance tunnels to get there. Main corridors are flooded." Graves nodded. "All right, keep your eyes sharp. We don't know what kind of automated defenses are still active." As they moved through the narrow, rusted corridors, a low hum began to build around them, like the entire structure was resonating. Graves signaled the team to halt, scanning the area for threats. Jace glanced at his handheld display. "Eyes booting up. It's sensing our presence." Graves cursed under her breath. "Can we override from here?" He shook his head. "No way. We need direct access to the core panel. If it goes into defense mode, we're screwed." They pressed on, crawling through maintenance shafts and bypassing collapsed sections. The deeper they went, the stronger the hum grew, vibrating through the metal like a heartbeat. Finally, they reached the control chamber, a vast cylindrical room dominated by a glowing central pillar wrapped in cables and conduits. Jace immediately began linking the jammer to the core interface. Graves kept her weapon at the ready, scanning for movement. The glow from the pillar intensified, and the hum rose to a deafening pitch. Come on, Jace muttered, fingers dancing over the control pad. "Just let me in, you stubborn piece of—" Suddenly, the chamber shuddered, and automated defense turrets unfolded from the walls, swiveling to aim directly at them. "Jace!" Graves shouted, dropping to a crouch and raising her weapon. He cursed and hammered the console. "Almost there, just hold them off!" The turrets whirred, their barrels glowing with charged energy. Graves opened fire, her rounds pinging off the metal plating. The team took cover behind pillars, returning fire as the room erupted in a chaotic dance of bullets and plasma bursts. One of the team members, Corporal Diaz, screamed as a bolt grazed his shoulder, knocking him to the ground. Graves gritted her teeth and kept firing, forcing the turrets to recalibrate their aim. "Jace, now would be good." The jammer emitted a sharp burst of static, and suddenly, the turrets froze, their targeting systems flickering. Jace raised his fist in triumph. "Got it. Manual override initiated." Graves didn't have time to celebrate. Status report. Jace wiped sweat from his brow. Core A, I is in standby. I'm locking down autonomous defense protocols and reassigning control to Earth Command. The hum in the chamber lowered to a soft, steady pulse, and the lights dimmed. The turrets retracted into the walls, and the threat indicators on Jace's display went dark. He slumped against the console, letting out a shaky breath. It worked, he said, more to himself than anyone else. We did it. Graves allowed herself a rare smile. Good job. Let's transmit the new protocols to the surface and report to the Federation. If they see the fleet behaving, maybe they'll call off the quarantine. Jace gave her a weary thumbs up. I'll handle the transmission. You just make sure nothing else tries to kill us while I'm at it. Graves gave him a light punch on the shoulder. You earned yourself a drink when we get back topside. He smirked. Just one? After all this? You better have a whole bottle waiting. As the control chamber stabilized, Graves couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph tempered with caution. They had managed to reclaim the fleet, but the knowledge that it had been a potential doomsday device planted long before humanity's rise was unsettling. Who or what had set it up? And why was it triggered only now? Graves didn't have the answers, but for now, she would settle for survival. As the sub prepared to ascend, she couldn't help but look back at the glowing core, wondering just how much of the story was still buried in the dark depths of the ocean. The ascent back to the surface was slow and cautious, every creak and groan of the Poseidon spear making Graves' heart pound. The mission had been successful, but the weight of uncertainty still hung over her like a dark cloud. Jace slumped in his seat, eyes half closed from sheer exhaustion. The portable jammer was still humming softly, maintaining the override protocol just in case the AI decided to get clever again. Graves glanced at him, relieved that they had made it out alive. You think the Federation will buy it? Jace mumbled, barely lifting his head. Graves exhaled slowly. They don't have much of a choice. As long as the fleet stays dormant and doesn't send any more signals, they'll have to acknowledge our control. Hopefully that'll convince them to lift the quarantine. As they broke through the surface, sunlight streamed into the cockpit, and Graves couldn't help but smile. The sky was clear, and the air felt lighter, like the planet itself was relieved to be spared from destruction. The base radio crackled to life, and Admiral Thorne's gruff voice came through. Graves, report. Did you neutralize the core? Graves hit the transmitter. Affirmative, Admiral. AI core is in full lockdown, and command protocols are linked to Earth Command. The fleet's secure. We're uploading the data now. There was a long pause, and she could almost hear Thorne processing the information. Good work. Federation's been holding position. No signs of hostility. You might have just saved our planet's ass. She allowed herself a moment of relief. Permission to come aboard, Admiral? Granted. And Graves, you did damn good. Get back here safely. The Poseidon's spear docked without incident, and Graves barely made it down the ramp before Thorne grabbed her arm and pulled her into a bear hug, completely breaking protocol. Don't ever scare me like that again, he muttered. She smiled against his shoulder. No promises, sir. Jace staggered off the sub behind her, grinning like an idiot. Can I request a week's leave? Preferably somewhere without water? Thorne barked a laugh. You've earned it. Go get patched up, both of you. Federation's requesting a formal debrief in an hour, but I'll handle it. You two look like you've been through hell. Graves nodded gratefully. She didn't even bother changing out of her gear, just collapsed into a chair in the break room, still catching her breath. Jace dropped into the seat next to her, his head tilted back, eyes closed. You think it's really over? He asked, barely above a whisper. Graves stared at the ceiling. I don't know. We've secured the fleet, but that doesn't mean we're out of danger. Whoever set that beacon is still out there, and they know where we are now." Jace opened one eye, giving her a tired smirk. "Can't you just let me enjoy one victory without dragging in more existential dread?" She chuckled, shaking her head. "Sorry, just can't help but think long-term. If the Krathul, or whatever's left of them, get wind of this, they might come looking for their little pet project." Jace rubbed his temples. "If they do, at least we've got a damn powerful fleet to defend ourselves. Let's just hope we never have to use it." The door swung open, and Director Hans strode in, her usual composed demeanor softened by something that almost looked like relief. She offered Graves a respectful nod. "I just spoke with Commander Dvorak. He acknowledged our compliance with the Federation's demands and has recommended that the quarantine be lifted. They'll remain in orbit for monitoring, but Earth won't be isolated." Graves let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "That's good news." Han's expression grew serious. "The Federation is still concerned about the origins of the fleet. They suspect that Earth may have been used as a long-term hiding place for ancient Krathul technology. They've dispatched reconnaissance teams to the star coordinates the signal pointed to, hoping to confirm the presence, or absence, of Krathul forces." Graves gave a slow nod. "If they find something, what's our role?" Han's gaze was unwavering. "To be prepared. Earth is now on the galactic radar, friend and foe alike. We need to solidify our alliances and make sure the fleet remains a deterrent rather than a weapon of conquest. You'll be part of the task force overseeing its continued management." Graves couldn't help but smile. "Guess I'm not done babysitting that monster fleet yet." Han actually smiled back. "No one else has earned that right more than you." As Han left, Jace gave her a sideways glance. "Looks like we're stuck with those murder boats after all." Graves just shrugged. "Better to have them and not need them than the other way around." He raised his bottle of water like it was a toast. "To humanity's newest nightmare, our very own underwater death fleet." Graves laughed, the tension finally melting away. "Yeah, to the fleet that made the galaxy fear us." The following weeks were a whirlwind of briefings, system tests, and international negotiations. Earth was more united than ever, brought together by the sudden reality that they were no longer the only intelligent life in the universe, and that they were sitting on top of the galaxy's most terrifying secret weapon. Graves found herself back at the docks one evening, watching the sunset blaze across the horizon. The waves were calm, and for once she felt at peace. The fleet was quiet, the Federation was holding their word, and Earth was safe, for now. Jace walked up beside her, hands in his pockets. "Admiral says the Federation's officially lifted the quarantine. We're back on the grid." Graves nodded. "Good. Let's hope they don't decide to change their minds." He gave her a reassuring smile. "If they do, we've got an ocean full of teeth to remind them why that's a bad idea." Graves smirked, her gaze fixed on the endless water. "We're not just survivors, Jace. We're fighters. And if the galaxy wants to test us, they'll find out just how stubborn humanity can be." For now, Earth was safe, and the Guardian fleet remained dormant, a sleeping titan that dared the galaxy to make the first move. Graves knew the future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity wasn't just a backwater species anymore. They were a force to be reckoned with, and Captain Emilia Graves would make sure it stayed that way. The Galactic Council had long believed in order. War was an outdated concept, something only primitive species indulged in. Diplomacy, trade, and careful negotiations were the foundation of interstellar civilization. That was until the Zervians came. The Zervians were an empire of warlords, monstrous, battle-hardened conquerors who thrived on bloodshed. They had torn through dozens of civilizations, razing planets, enslaving entire species, and breaking every treaty that had ever been signed. When they reached the core systems, the Council did what they always did. They sent envoys. The Zervians sent back their heads. In desperation, the Council searched for an answer. They needed warriors. Not just soldiers trained for combat, but a species that understood war. One that had war engraved into its history, its culture, and its very soul. That's when they found humans. At first, the Council was hesitant. Humans were a young race, barely out of their own solar system, living on a backwater planet they called Earth. Their technology was laughable, their presence in the galactic community minimal. But when the scholars and analysts began digging into human history, they uncovered something terrifying. Humans were born for war. They were the only known species that had never known a time without conflict. Their past was drenched in blood, their civilizations forged through battle. Their greatest leaders celebrated not for peace, but for conquest. Unlike the Zervians, who were warriors by biology, humans had perfected war by choice. They built weapons that could destroy entire continents, developed tactics that had won against impossible odds, and refined combat strategies in ways no other species ever had. But what made them truly terrifying was their adaptability. Humans didn't just fight. They learned. They evolved. They took the best tactics from every enemy and made them their own. They turned their weaknesses into strengths, and their desperation into victory. The Council approached Earth with an offer. Save the galaxy and earn a place among the stars. The humans agreed. But what the Council didn't realize was that they hadn't just recruited soldiers. They had unleashed war gods. The Galactic Council sat in uneasy silence as they watched the footage again. The holographic projection flickered, showing the smoking ruins of what was once a thriving city. Charred bodies littered the streets, their forms unrecognizable, some crushed beneath the metal husks of destroyed Council war machines. The Zervians had attacked Osiris-9, a core world, and left no survivors. High Chancellor Varric Tan turned his many eyes toward the assembled representatives. This is the third planet they have raised in the last 2 cycles. Our peacekeepers were annihilated. The Zervian Empire does not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They exist to conquer. We have no force in this galaxy capable of stopping them. Murmurs of fear and defeat rippled through the chamber. Then, a voice cut through the tension. There is one species that might be able to fight them. The speaker was Ambassador Zell Rowe, a reptilian diplomat from the minor world of Kessari Prime. He tapped a panel, and a new holographic display appeared, showing a blue and green planet. Humans, he said. The name meant little to most in the chamber. Earth was barely a footnote in the galactic archives. A young species technologically behind, insignificant. The Rixian delegate scoffed. The primates? They are children in the grand scale of the cosmos. How could they stand against a force that has shattered the mightiest of our fleets? Zelro's reptilian lips curled into something resembling a smile. Because they are not children in the art of war. He tapped the panel again, and this time the display changed. It no longer showed Earth as it was today, but as it had been throughout its long, bloody history. The room darkened, and the holograms flickered to life. The Mongol hordes sweeping across entire continents, led by Genghis Khan, slaughtering millions. The Roman legions, conquering vast territories, perfecting the art of war through discipline and ruthless efficiency. The world wars, tanks rolling over the ruins of cities, nuclear fire consuming entire populations in an instant. Humanity's wars were endless. Their history was carved in blood and conquest. The chamber was silent. They do not fight like us, Zell Rowe continued. We send armies to war with precision, with logic. But humans, they fight with something else, something primal, something that makes them stronger the more desperate the battle becomes. High Chancellor Varric Tan leaned forward, his voice filled with curiosity and hesitation. "And you believe they will fight for us?" Zell-Ro chuckled. "They won't do it for us. They will do it because war is what they were made for. They will do it because someone has given them an enemy." General Marcus Steele listened to the alien delegation's proposal, his expression unreadable. He had spent his entire career preparing for a war with another human nation, never imagining that first contact with an advanced species would come in the form of a desperate plea. "They're asking us to fight their war for them," Steele said, leaning back in his chair, "to throw our soldiers into a battle against an empire that has already crushed the greatest powers in the galaxy." Ambassador Zell-Ro sat across from him, hands folded. "Yes," he said, "that is exactly what we ask." Steele let out a breath and turned toward his aides. They were exchanging uncertain glances, but the truth was, they were considering it. Earth had spent centuries locked in conflicts of its own making. The Cold War, the World Wars, proxy wars, insurgencies. Humanity had developed warfare to an art form, always preparing for the next inevitable struggle. But now, for the first time in history, there was no war on Earth. Nations still postured and plotted, but true, large-scale war had been avoided. Perhaps too long. Humans weren't just good at war, they needed it. Steele turned back to the alien diplomat. "If we agree, if we go to war against this empire, what do we get in return?" Zell-Ro smiled. "A place among the stars, technology beyond your imagining, and a legacy that will never be forgotten." Steele exhaled slowly, thinking. Then, he tapped a button on the table. A holographic map of Earth's military forces appeared. "Then let me show you what you've just awakened," he said. "If you want warriors, we'll give you war gods." The night sky above Fort Kennedy, one of Earth's most advanced military bases, was alive with activity. Rows of gunmetal-gray dropships stood ready, their engines humming with barely restrained power. Squads of soldiers moved in formation, loading supplies, calibrating weapons, checking their gear. The ground trembled as exo-titans, massive bipedal war machines, were prepped for deployment. Humanity was going to war. General Marcus Steele stood on an elevated platform, overlooking the organized chaos below. Next to him, Ambassador Zell-Ro observed everything with a mix of awe and barely concealed fear. "How many soldiers will you send?" Zell-Ro asked. Steele didn't look away from his troops. "At first, 50,000. The ambassador's eyes widened in alarm. 50,000? That's suicide. The Zervians field millions in their war campaigns. They control entire fleets, planets, resources beyond comprehension." Steele smirked. "Yeah, and they've never fought humans before." Zell-Ro hesitated, then exhaled. "You're really confident in your species." Steele turned to him, eyes cold. "Ambassador, let me explain something to you. Every species in the galaxy evolved to survive. We evolved to conquer." He gestured towards the hangars, where elite units were boarding their transports. The Black Templars, the 3rd Helljumpers, the 7th Armored Lancers. "We don't just fight wars, we thrive in them. We study them, perfect them, make them art. You think we're outnumbered? Good. You think we're outgunned? Even better. The Zervians fight with brute strength. We fight with strategy, technology, and something your precious Galactic Council never understood: ruthlessness." Zell-Ro swallowed hard. "I just hope you understand what you're unleashing." Steele grinned. "Oh, we do." General Kavor of the Zervian Dominion sat atop his throne of polished skulls. The throne room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of blood and incense. His empire had crushed countless civilizations, subjugating weakling species that groveled at their feet. Now, the Galactic Council had made one final, pitiful attempt at resistance. They had called upon a species Kavor had barely even heard of. Humans. "What do we know of them?" he growled, his voice like grinding stone. A subordinate warrior stepped forward. "Primitive, barely spacefaring. Their weapons are outdated, their ships slow, their numbers insignificant." Kavor let out a deep, rumbling laugh. "Then this will be nothing more than another culling." The doors to the chamber burst open. A Zervian scout rushed in, panting heavily. His exoskeleton was covered in blood. "My lord, the humans, they have arrived." Kavor raised a ridged brow. "Already?" The scout's mandibles clicked in agitation. "It is unlike anything we have seen before. They do not fight like the others. They—" An explosion rocked the fortress. The walls shook, dust and debris cascading from the ceiling. Kavor leapt to his feet. "What in the void is happening?" A transmission came through, crackling with static. Zervian forces in the outer defense line were screaming in fear. "They came from the sky! Black-armored demons! Our weapons do nothing! Nothing! They're slaughtering us!" Static. Silence. Kavor's eyes narrowed. He turned to his officers. "Mobilize all forces. We will show these primates the meaning of true war." The UEN Dreadnought Warhammer floated silently, its dark silhouette blocking out the light from the planet's twin suns. Inside, General Steele watched the holographic display. The first wave of human forces had landed. Orbital drop troopers had descended from low orbit at terminal velocity, their powered exosuits absorbing the impact. They hit the ground like meteorites, already firing before their boots fully touched the surface. The Zervians were used to slow, methodical planetary invasions. They had never encountered shock warfare before. Steele smirked as he watched the feed from the ground. Zervian soldiers were breaking ranks. Their towering insectoid forms, once so confident, so arrogant, were now scrambling, running as human soldiers moved in tight formations, unleashing precision gunfire. A Zervian commander shouted orders, trying to rally his troops. A shadow moved behind him. A blade flashed. Blood sprayed. The commander collapsed, his throat slit. Standing behind him was a human in advanced adaptive camo armor. A ghost operative, one of Earth's most elite assassins. The soldier tapped his comm. "Command, Ghost Team has infiltrated enemy headquarters, sending coordinates for orbital strike." Steele turned to his weapons officer. "Send them a message." A moment later, the sky caught fire. Zervian fortifications erupted as orbital rail cannons fired from space. Entire regiments of warriors were vaporized in an instant. The very air burned. Zelro watched from the command bridge, his hands trembling. "This," he whispered, "this isn't war. This is annihilation." Steele exhaled, watching the Zervian forces collapse in terror. "Now you understand." On the battlefield below, the last Zervian warriors were falling back. A human soldier stood among the ruins, his rifle smoking. The battlefield was littered with alien corpses. Blood soaked the soil. He removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face, eyes cold as steel. A wounded Zervian warrior lay at his feet, panting heavily. His mandibles quivered as he stared up at the human. What are you?" the alien rasped. The soldier kneeled, gripping his combat knife. "We're human." Then he ended it. War had come to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The fires of war still burned on Xiphos 3, but the battle was already won. The Zervian forces had been annihilated. Their fortress cities lay in ruins, their once proud legions now nothing more than smoking corpses. For the first time in the history of the Zervian Dominion, they had not just suffered a defeat, they had been humiliated. The few Zervian survivors had fled into the mountains, retreating toward their remaining strongholds. But humanity did not believe in leaving survivors. General Steele stood on the bridge of the UEN Warhammer, watching a live feed of the ongoing operations. The Black Templars were conducting sweeps, tracking down the stragglers. In the dead of night, ghost operatives slipped into caves where the Zervians thought they were safe. Silent gunfire. Blades cutting throats. By dawn, not a single Zervian was left alive on Xiphos 3. It wasn't just a victory, it was a message. The air inside the Grand War Chamber was thick with tension. The Zervian High Warlords sat around a massive stone table, their exoskeletons twitching in agitation. Holographic projections flickered, showing real-time footage of Xiphos 3's destruction. Kavor stood, mandibles clicking in rage. "I demand an explanation," he roared. "We are the dominant species of this galaxy. No civilization has ever resisted us. No world has ever been taken from our grasp. Who are these humans?" A hologram of a Zervian intelligence officer flickered to life. His voice was tight with fear. "They are not what we believed them to be. We assumed them to be primitive, weak, incapable of large-scale warfare." A pause. We were wrong. Another projection appeared, grainy battle footage recovered from a fallen Zervian soldier's helmet. The High Warlords watched as human soldiers dropped from the sky like meteors, their rifles spewing precise bursts of armor-piercing fire. The camera feed jolted as a massive exo-titan stomped into frame, a walking behemoth of steel, bristling with cannons. A single barrage from its railguns tore through Zervian lines like paper. The last thing the Zervian soldier saw before the feed cut out was a human commando, his armor covered in blood, driving a combat knife straight through his skull. The chamber was silent. One of the younger warlords whispered, "They fight like us." "No." Kavor's voice was low, filled with something the others had never heard before. "Fear. They fight better than us." The room was filled with the heavy scent of cigar smoke and coffee. The military brass sat around a war table, holographic projections showing current and potential war fronts. General Steele leaned back in his chair. "That was almost too easy." "They didn't expect us to be a threat," Admiral Vasquez replied. "They thought we'd break like every other species they've conquered." "Well, they know better now," Steele said. The door opened, and Ambassador Zell Rowe stepped in, flanked by 2 security officers. His reptilian face looked paler than usual. "They're preparing to retaliate," he said. Steele smirked. "Good." Zell Rowe exhaled sharply. "You don't understand. The Zervians have declared a blood war." The room fell silent. Zell Rowe continued, his voice urgent. "The last time the Zervians called a blood war, they exterminated an entire species. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They will mobilize everything to destroy you. Your entire planet is now a target." Steele exchanged a glance with the other military leaders. Then, to Zell Rowe's horror, he laughed. "You think that scares us?" Steele said. "Do you know how many times we've faced total annihilation in our history? Nuclear war, world wars, extinction events? We've survived them all." Zell Rowe shook his head. "This is different. The Zervians will burn entire continents. You must—" Steele slammed his fist on the table. "They will try." Then he stood, his eyes cold and calculating. "They want a blood war? Fine, we'll give them one." The Zervian First and Second War fleets moved through deep space, hundreds of dreadnoughts, and thousands of warships in perfect formation. Their orders were simple: destroy Earth, exterminate humanity, leave nothing behind. Kavor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devourer, staring at the swirling blue-green planet in the distance. "This world," he growled, mandibles clicking. "I want it reduced to ash." His fleet admiral nodded. "The humans have no chance. We outnumber them 1,000 to 1. They cannot possibly defend against this force." Kavor's mandibles twitched. "Then why," he said slowly, "does something feel wrong?" The Zervians thought humanity was weak. They thought Earth was just another primitive world, a ripe target for conquest. They never considered that humans might have been preparing for this moment all along. For the past 50 years, Earth's military-industrial complex had been building weapons beyond anything the rest of the galaxy had seen. Hidden beneath the moon's surface was Project Valkyrie, a classified weapons platform designed for one purpose: to annihilate an invading fleet before it even reached Earth. As the Zervian armada entered Earth's orbital range, Valkyrie went online. A single transmission was sent to the fleet. "Welcome to Earth." Then the sky erupted. Massive orbital railguns fired their first salvo, sending hyper-accelerated tungsten slugs tearing through Zervian warships like paper. Kinetic kill satellites unleashed swarms of hunter-seeker missiles, each programmed to track and eliminate the Zervian fleet's command ships. A Zervian dreadnought took a direct hit, its shields overloaded, its hull ripped apart in an instant. Explosions rippled across the fleet as Earth's defenses unleashed hell. Kavor's eyes widened as he watched ship after ship disintegrate under the onslaught. This wasn't a planetary defense grid. It was a planetary trap. As the Zervian fleet burned in orbit, Earth mobilized. Military bases across the planet activated hidden war assets, massive underground silos opening to reveal planetary defense cannons, railguns the size of skyscrapers, carrier-class warships rising from hidden bunkers. And then, the counterattack began. Across the world, massive jump gates powered up, opening direct wormholes to Zervian-controlled systems. Humanity wasn't just going to defend Earth. They were going to take the war to the enemy's doorstep. Kavor stared in horror as a massive human dreadnought emerged from a wormhole right next to his fleet. The last thing he heard before the battle began was a human voice, cold and mocking. "You wanted war? Then let's see if you can survive it." The Zervian fleet was in chaos. Hundreds of warships burned in orbit above Earth, their shattered hulls drifting aimlessly through space. What was supposed to be a swift planetary annihilation had turned into a massacre. And not for the humans. Kavor clutched the edge of his command throne, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. How? He bellowed as another Zervian dreadnought detonated in the void, torn apart by Earth's orbital defenses. Admiral Zarkoz, his second-in-command, stood frozen beside him. "We were told they were primitive, that they had no advanced fleets, no planetary defenses." His voice trembled. "They have outplayed us at every step. We never even saw their true strength until it was too late." Kavor watched in horror as more wormholes began opening, not just in orbit, but in deep space, directly behind Zervian lines. Then, the real onslaught began. Earth's war machine had finally been unleashed. Dreadnoughts the size of mountains emerged from jump gates, their sleek, dark hulls built for brutal efficiency. Strike squadrons of stealth fighters wove between enemy formations, launching micro-missiles that tore through Zervian ships like razor wire through flesh. And then came the boarding pods. The Zervians barely had time to react before hundreds of drop pods smashed into the sides of their warships, each one carrying a squad of human shock troopers. Within moments, the Zervian fleet became a battlefield from the inside out. Zervian warriors rushed through their own hallways, their chitinous armor slick with blood, as humans tore through them with close-quarters combat tactics the galaxy had never seen before. A Black Templar swung a vibro blade through a Zervian officer's throat, kicking the corpse aside before unloading his rifle into a squad of incoming warriors. A ghost operative decloaked inside the enemy command center, knifing one Zervian in the back before silencing the entire bridge crew with suppressed rounds. Everywhere, the same message was clear. Humanity didn't just want victory. They wanted domination. Inside the Devourer, Kavor watched as his fleet collapsed around him. His officers were screaming. The Zervian war machine, an empire built on millennia of conquest, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had never even considered a threat. Something stirred in Kavor's chest. Something alien, something Zervians were never supposed to feel. Doubt. He turned to Zarkos, his mandibles twitching. "This is not war, this is—" He exhaled, his body trembling. "Extermination." Zarkos stepped forward hesitantly. "We must fall back. If we retreat to Zervian Prime, we can regroup and—" His words were cut off by a sudden power fluctuation. Kavor's eyes widened. The lights flickered. A deep, low humming filled the bridge. "What is that?" he growled. Zarkos checked the data feed, his face draining of color. "They've breached the ship." Kavor barely had time to react before the blast doors imploded, and humans stepped onto the bridge. Kavor stared at the figure in front of him. A human. Not just any human. A warrior, clad in black war plate, his rifle slung across his back. A long combat knife dripped with blood in his right hand. General Marcus Steele. Behind Steele, more human Black Templars stepped onto the bridge, their weapons raised, their armor smeared with Zervian blood. Kavor roared, drawing his twin plasma blades. "I will kill you with my own hands, human!" Steele smirked. "You can try." Kavor lunged, swinging with the brute force of a warlord. But Steele was faster. He ducked, sidestepped, and drove his blade into Kavor's side. The warlord stumbled, black ichor oozing from the wound. He tried to strike again, but Steele caught his wrist, twisted, and snapped it. Kavor roared in agony. He swung wildly, but Steele dodged effortlessly. And then, the killing blow. Steele buried his knife into Kavor's throat and twisted. The warlord gurgled, mandibles twitching, his eyes full of rage and disbelief. With a final ragged breath, Kavor collapsed. The warlord of the Zervian fleet was dead. Steele stepped over the corpse, wiping his blade clean. He turned to his men. "Secure the ship. Kill anyone still breathing." By the end of the battle, less than 5% of the Zervian fleet remained. Most of them ran. Cowardly, desperate to escape humanity's wrath. But the humans were not done. The counter-invasion had already begun. Jump gates opened across Zervian space, spilling out human warships. Planetary defenses fell within hours. For the first time in history, the Zervian Dominion, the most feared empire in the galaxy, was on the brink of extinction. And the humans? They were just getting started. The Zervian Dominion was collapsing. For centuries, their empire had thrived on bloodshed. They had subjugated countless civilizations, their warriors feared as the deadliest force in the galaxy. But now, they were the ones being hunted. The Zervian homeworld, Zervian Prime, stood at the heart of their empire. A fortress world, encased in impenetrable defenses, surrounded by the largest fleet ever assembled. At least that's what they thought, because humanity was coming, and there would be no mercy. The Grand War Chamber was in chaos. The remaining warlords screamed over each other, their mandibles twitching in desperation. Red emergency lights cast eerie shadows over the carved stone walls, the room thick with the scent of burning incense and fear. "They are coming," one warlord hissed, slamming his fist against the table. "They have already taken 6 systems in 3 days. 6 systems." "They fight like demons," another one whispered, trembling. "We send fleets, they destroy them. We send armies, they vanish. They do not fight for territory, they fight to kill." A holographic projection flickered to life, displaying the full-scale human invasion spreading across Zervian space. Their warships moved like predators, striking deep behind enemy lines, destroying supply routes, orbital platforms, entire garrisons. Wherever humans arrived, Zervian planets burned. "We must surrender," one warlord croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent. Then, the doors slammed open. A Zervian warrior stumbled in, his armor soaked in blood. He collapsed to his knees, gasping. "The humans!" he wheezed, mandibles shaking. The warlord stared. "They're already here." The UEN dreadnought Warhammer loomed over the Zervian homeworld like a god of death. Hundreds of human warships emerged from jump gates, forming a blockade around the planet. General Steele stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, watching his masterpiece unfold. The Zervians had no idea how to react. They were used to fighting weaker species, creatures that begged for their lives, planets that surrendered before the first shot was even fired. But humanity wasn't here to negotiate. Humanity was here to end them. Steele turned to his fleet admiral. "Are the orbital cannons primed?" "Aye, sir. Targeting every major city." "Fire." The sky erupted. Massive tungsten slugs rained down from orbit, punching through Zervian cities like meteor strikes. Skyscrapers crumbled. Entire districts were wiped off the map in an instant. Zervian soldiers scrambled to return fire, but there was nothing to shoot. The humans were still in orbit, picking them apart from the sky. Then came the drop pods. Thousands of them. They fell like a storm, crashing into the ruined cities. Before the dust even settled, human soldiers burst from the wreckage. Guns blazing, blades slicing through armor, grenades turning defensive positions into vapor. Zervian warlords screamed orders, sending their greatest warriors into battle. But they didn't understand. This wasn't a war. This was extermination. Deep inside the Zervian war palace, High Warlord Jarun prepared for battle. He was the last of the old guard, the last true warlord of his people. He had fought in over 1,000 campaigns, conquered entire star systems with his own hands. And now, he stood alone in the ruins of his throne room, gripping his twin plasma scimitars. The doors blew apart. Humans stormed in. At the front, General Steele. Their eyes met. No words were spoken. Jarun charged. Steele sidestepped the first swing, his blade flashing. Blood splattered across the stone floor as one of Jarun's arms was severed. The warlord howled, spinning for another strike. Steele caught his wrist, twisted, and drove his knife into Jarun's chest. The Zervian staggered. He stared down at the blade buried in his chest, then up at Steele. "You," he gurgled, "are demons." Steele ripped the knife free. Jarun collapsed. The last warlord of the Zervian Dominion was dead. The destruction of Zervian Prime sent shockwaves across the stars. The once mighty Zervian Dominion, the greatest war machine in the galaxy, was gone. But the war wasn't over. The Galactic Council watched in horrified silence as footage of the invasion spread. A message was sent to every remaining Zervian outpost, every remaining colony world. Steele's voice was calm, cold. "Your empire is over. Surrender now or share your homeworld's fate." Some Zervians fled, some resisted. None survived. The war lasted 6 months. By the end, not a single Zervian world remained under their control. Those that surrendered were spared. Those that resisted were eradicated. For the first time in galactic history, a new empire had risen. Humanity. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Steele stood on the balcony of the Zervian War Palace, now repurposed as the capital of humanity's new empire. Zell Rowe, the alien ambassador who had once pleaded for humanity's help, stood beside him, his face pale. "You have reshaped the galaxy," Zell-Ro murmured. Steele took a slow breath, staring at the burning remains of the Zervian Empire. "They wanted a war," he said. He turned, his eyes cold, ruthless. "We gave them gods." The Zervian Dominion was no more. Once the most feared war machine in the galaxy, it had been systematically dismantled by humanity in a war that lasted less than a year. Their homeworld, Zervian Prime, lay in ruins, their mighty fleets turned to floating wreckage, their warlords either dead or kneeling before their new masters. For the first time in recorded history, a new empire had risen, and at its heart stood humanity. From the shattered remains of the old order, the United Earth Dominion, UED, was born. The Galactic Council, once the ruling body of interstellar civilization, had become obsolete overnight. Where once they had debated policies and treaties, now they simply obeyed. Human warships patrolled the core worlds. Black-armored soldiers stood watch in every major system. The message was clear. Humanity was not a passing storm. They were the new rulers of the stars. And yet, despite their total victory, despite standing as undisputed war gods, Steele knew one undeniable truth. This was just the beginning. Ambassador Zell-Ro walked the halls of the new Imperial War Complex on Zervian Prime, now renamed Terra Ultima. He had been there from the start. He had begged humanity to join the war. And now, as he looked at what they had built, he wondered if he had made a mistake. He found General Steele standing in the command chamber, staring at a massive holographic display of the galaxy. "Is it over?" Zell-Ro asked quietly. Steele didn't look at him. "Wars don't just end, they evolve." Zell-Ro frowned. "The Zervians are gone. No force in the galaxy can oppose you. What else is left to fight?" Steele turned, his cold blue eyes locking onto the ambassador. "You think the galaxy will accept human rule forever?" he asked. "Right now they kneel, not because they want to, but because they fear what happens if they don't." Zell-Ro swallowed hard. "And if that fear fades?" Steele's gaze darkened. "Then we remind them." Deep in the uncharted void, past the known edges of the galaxy, something stirred. A Zervian remnant fleet, hidden for decades, received the final transmission from Zervian Prime before its fall. Aboard the last warship, a new warlord rose. Jakor, son of Kavor, stared at the screen, watching the footage of his father's humiliating death at human hands. His claws dug into his throne. "They think they have won," he growled. "They think they are safe." His warriors hissed in agreement. "Let them rule," Jakor murmured. "Let them grow comfortable." Then his mandibles curled into a savage grin. "When the time is right, we will remind them what true war looks like." Back on Terra Ultima, Steele stood alone in his war room, the galaxy laid out before him. He had won. Humanity had won. But deep down, he felt it. An emptiness. Peace. The absence of war. It was unnatural. He exhaled, gripping the edge of the war table. There would always be another fight. Another enemy. Another war. And humanity? Humanity would always be ready.